Welcome to the Late Lunch Leftovers, where we take a look back at some of the best bits from last week. We were back at the allotment in Laxey, finding out how our Tanya has put the Isle of Man on the television map. Simon Quine shared his sticker collection with us, and Mike Cooley gave some mindful advice for those with a fear of flying who are about to embark on their holidays. But first, let's hear about our latest charity of the week.
The Late Lunch Charity of the Week. Please tell us your name and charity.
My name is Amanda Cafiro, and the charity I work for is Cruse Bereavement Care, Isle of Man.
How did the charity start and what is its purpose?
So Cruse Bereavement Care in the Isle of Man has been going since 1988, and in the Isle of Man it was put together by a group of individuals that identified the need for bereavement support on the Isle of Man. And the support that we give, at that point, was to provide one-to-one support in somebody's home. There wasn't an office at that point.
Tell us about your team.
It's run predominantly by volunteers, so we have 50 volunteers in total. Some of those are the management board. A big percentage of them are the bereavement support volunteers. We have a team of administrators that fall within that. And then the paid staff, there's 4 individuals, so there's myself, it's a full-time role. And then we have 2 children and young people workers. They're funded by Children in Need, but they're both on a sort of a part-time basis. And then we've got a part-time paid administrator as well.
Who is the charity for?
Cruse is for anybody that's been bereaved, and that can be an adult, a young person or a child. When we kind of think about the support, it's being alongside that person in their grief journey. So that's kind of the core of what we do. But we actually offer advice, support and education to the entire community around grief and bereavement. So that means we offer training and awareness to help people who are perhaps working with someone who's been bereaved or someone that's affected by grief. We respond to crisis work. So if there's a death in the community that impacts a huge amount of people, for example, in a school, we have a team that go into school to help guide and support through the aftermath support along what that kind of organisation might need. The Children and Young Persons programme has really developed, and a new kind of development in the last year is working with families. So there's an emphasis on how we can develop that even further now.
Which other organisations do you work with?
We work with any organisation that needs our help. When we look at our referral source, although we are self-referral, we always find out who the individual told them about Cruse. So a big percentage of that is, for example, government departments. So we're always kind of liaising to see how we can best improve our service and how we can promote and let people know that we're here. Obviously, the corporates, we offer bereavement support and bereavement awareness for corporate organisations. So it might be that a team has a specific need to understand when they're speaking to somebody who's been bereaved, so we can educate around that. We can go in and help with if there's been a death in an organisation, for the managers and the staff to be able to cope and learn how to respond to that, and then obviously prepare for anything that might happen in the future as well. So anybody again that's affected by death, which is everyone.
The Late Lunch Charity of the Week.
The Nation Station, Max Radio.
She is a superstar. Now, she's busy picking gooseberries, and we're going to be doing some more of this over the course of the show, but we say you're a superstar, Tanya, because in case anyone wasn't aware, you just featured on a rather large TV show, didn't you?
That's right. It was so exciting. So last Wednesday, the 17th, I had quite a long segment on BBC's Gardener's World, where I met Frances Tophill. She came to the allotment and we talked about growing skincare plants here in the allotment.
And it was such a wonderful segment, I have to say. Both Beth and I watched it, didn't we? And the weather made it look so glorious. But she was so invested in what you were doing. She was genuinely interested, wasn't she?
Well, off camera, Frances and I spoke quite a bit through the day. It was a full, 9 or 10 hours of filming. And she is just as interested as I am in growing plants that have useful purposes. So not just food, not slavishly growing them, as she said in the interview, but also growing plants for skincare that are useful in dyeing fabric and wool, medicinal herbs, winemaking, and also plants for bees and butterflies and other pollinators.
And what's really interesting, Tanya, is that you got a real behind the scenes look into how television production actually works.
Oh yeah.
And actually you had to accelerate some of the growing plants in your garden.
Oh my goodness. So they contacted me, and originally we were going to be filming in mid-July, so not that far off from where we are right now. When everything is definitely going to be blooming, it would have been little effort. Instead, it was early June, and that was a month earlier than some of my plants would have been flowering. So I was really stressed out and had them covered in fleece and was really babying them a lot just to get them into a state where they could be on Gardener's World.
And I think you succeeded, because it did look absolutely glorious. And what sort of response have you had since it's been on?
It has been overwhelming. I have had literally hundreds of orders and people emailing me and contacting me and ringing me, telling me how inspired they are. And I knew that people would maybe find me afterwards, and so I put together a guide on growing and using calendula in skincare, and that has been really, really popular. But it's just been incredible. It's been a whirlwind of a week.
Well, we're very glad that you would have us lowly people back with you now. You're such a superstar. And you've got some gooseberries in your hand.
I do. You know, with all of this hectic, things going on and being focused on another side of business, I haven't picked all of my gooseberries. So I'm putting you girls to work today to help me finish picking the gooseberries, because I need to make some jam.
Oh, fantastic. We do like making jam. I should say as well, just one little reference to the programme. I love the fact you were telling us just a moment ago before we came on air. You've even had another YouTuber make a spoof out of something that happened on the TV show, haven't you?
Oh, that was hilarious. I just saw that yesterday. A friend sent it to me, and there is a scene in the segment where we discuss using honey for skincare and that you can use it as a facial mask. And it was quite funny because Monty Don, his response to the segment was, quite funny, and it was about that. But this guy, he took it to another level, and he started off his video with a bottle of honey on his face, speaking to his little daughter, saying, that woman, Tanya from Gardener's World, said. It was hilarious. I'll have to share the link over on my Facebook.
Fame at last. And speaking of sharing links, we did put the interview that you yourself did with Frances Tophill after the filming. We've put that on our YouTube channel and various social, Twitter and everything as well. So you can actually go back and listen to that now, which is a lovely conversation the two of them had.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
It is Wednesday, so it is time for our midweek mindfulness session with Mike Cooley. And Mike, we mentioned the podcast was about sitting with your feelings today. It's a little bit difficult to do that when those feelings aren't necessarily very comfortable. So, I'm thinking things like depression, anxiety, things like that.
Yeah, that's why we don't do it. But it's a really useful and quite a profoundly simple thing to do, is actually sit with them. And it's something I certainly do a lot with clients I see, whether or not it's a craving, like, an addiction or something they want to stop doing, an urge, physical pain, an emotion they have that they want to release. You have to feel it. That's how it works, is you feel into it. And so the practice we did was I was just asking questions. Based on what you were feeling. Is it hot? Is it cold? What's the depth? Is it moving? Is it still? Etc. And when I work with people individually, I'll get them to actually say out loud. So I'm kind of tracking what they're reporting. And the effects can be absolutely amazing. These sensations can drop away. They can switch off. They can rest, relax, or suddenly they start feeling like something completely different. Sadness can feel kind of relaxing or slightly pleasant. It's just, there's no right answer, but once you start exploring sensations rather than ignoring them, there's lots of learning to be had.
And this sort of links in a little bit to two things that I saw on your page recently. One was a wonderful review that somebody had put up from having tried mindfulness with you, and again linked to depression, because sometimes if you're going through depression, it can feel so incredibly overwhelming that you would think, oh, mindfulness won't help that. But this user was saying genuinely it had a massive effect on him.
Yeah, and yes, and in a very short space of time. It's a hugely profound practice. And when people say, well, what is it then? Well, it's just you paying attention to what's happening in you. And you think, surely that can't do anything. Well, no, it does everything. That's why it's so simple. It's not something new. It's something that's kind of hardwired into us, our ability to pay attention and focus into whatever we choose. And, as Beth said, when we do choose, with guidance, to tune in and feel in and focus into sadness, depression, grief, pain, that craving for the next cigarette, suddenly you realise that you have much more power than you thought. It feels like it's in charge. Well, it's not. You're bigger than it for a start. And so you start to realise, it really only has the power I invest in it. And when I stop doing that, when I deconstruct it by talking about the texture of it or the heat or suddenly it just becomes a sensation.
So I'm going to ask a question then for all those people who are maybe thinking about going on holiday at the moment. Is that time of year? School's come to an end. People are going away. What if you have anxiety of flying, fear of flying? Because that's a sensation at the end of the day. I'm not looking at you, Beth. Is this something that you could utilise even if you're sort of on the plane or in advance or...
Yeah, the whole way through, and it's a common theme, with people I work with, and I think, is it Virgin Airways now? They have a mindfulness channel that you can actually listen to on the plane. So, Richard Branson's on board with mindfulness.
Oh, he's on board.
He's on board, yeah. So, yes, it is. And, I mean, for a start, you could listen back to some of the podcasts here, especially the See, Hear, Feel practice, the body scans and things like that, the one we've just done. So practicing mindfulness anyway boosts your calm and your focus, so that when you're packing and going towards the airport, etc., you will feel generally calmer. When you're in the queue, for the security, you're able to just be aware of your feet on the ground, your breath moving in your body. That takes up your focus rather than the panicking thoughts and etc. When you're on the plane, I read something before from someone doing Shinzen Young's practice, which I've done here. And she had a child screaming next to her. She had anxiety on the plane herself, and it was a child who was not enjoying it either during a 4-hour flight. So she thought she'd try the See, Hear, Feel practice. So she started to look out of the window and become really kind of absorbed in the details of the clouds and the play of the light. And she made up her own label, which was See Beauty. So whenever she saw something that was to her interesting, beautiful, she would label it in her mind. See beauty, see. And she said suddenly it was, the flight was over. She became absorbed in something really nourishing compared to just churning around in those get me out of here feelings. So that's it. And part of that is just to let yourself kind of settle in and sit in with the knot in your stomach, the panic in your chest, and breathe.
The Nation Station. Radio.
Time now for the latest in our Collectors series, and this is where we talk to people about the items that they have collected over the years, whatever they may be. And I'm sure you listening there might have something up in the attic that you used to collect as a child, perhaps, or something you had a little bit of an obsession with, and you might actually be able to help today's collector.
Well, I am Simon Quine, and I'm here to talk about Merlin football stickers.
And this, Simon, was something that you were, is it fair to say you were fairly passionate about as a lad?
Yeah, I think I found 2 here kicking around the house. These must be the 2 that I'm proudest of. I'm sure there were more that maybe have now, they're in the parents' attic, or maybe they didn't even last that long. Maybe they've ended up in the bin in years gone by. But yeah, I got into this when I was a kid. I mean, this one here is the 94-95 season, so I'd have been 5, 6 about when I was doing this.
Got, need. The awesome new sticker collection from Panini is here.
Oh my God, do you remember getting your first sticker book?
Yeah, I think it was something my dad sort of encouraged. And I think, the Merlin books have been around for a long time. But I think when the Premier League started in 92, 93, they had a bit of a resurgence then, the sort of commercialisation of football and everything. And I got into it quite well. I thought, when I first mentioned this to you, I thought this 94, 95 one, I was one sticker short. Now I'm missing 2 pages. I'm missing half the Arsenal team and half the Wimbledon team. So unless it was on that page, it's actually complete, this one.
So, I wonder, as somebody who, obviously, you were fairly methodical with the way that you got your little stickers and put them in, how do you feel looking back and not having a complete book?
Yeah, it's a little bit disappointing. This one here, this 90, I think this is 96, 97 maybe, this is a fairly poor effort, to be honest. I must have lost heart on this quite quickly because, there's pages and pages here with stickers missing. It's very disappointing.
Can you not get the back catalogue? Is there any way of getting those stickers now?
I'm sure you can. It was quite interesting. I was flicking through this morning, and obviously this is before mass internet, sort of 1994, and you could go along to swap shop tours. So this is, they're held in massive places like Crystal Palace and football grounds, and there's kids here taking their books along and swapping their stickers with other people. I think that's probably all been replaced by online now. It's probably all done on eBay, or whether there's a Facebook group where you can go on and trade the stickers that you've got, or maybe just buy the ones you're missing at the end.
I've moved house recently, and check what I found just from when I was a kid, and it's complete. Get Bosnich there.
Oh, do you know, I only ever had one sticker book, and that was for New Kids on the Block, which I might have mentioned a couple of weeks ago, actually. And I do remember sort of opening it with almost fervour, seeing which ones you had. There's that disappointment, isn't there, when you get duplicates?
Oh, yes, yeah. And memories of going to school with a big stack of stickers and going around your friends at break time and trying to swap them. And there were always a really elusive one that no one could get. It did have a bit of a resurgence for me at the 2014 World Cup. I'd been about 26, 27 then, and some friends of mine, who I must say were much older than me, they were well into their mid-30s, they started doing it, and I thought, you know what, this is a nice nostalgia thing of being a kid, so I got into that. Didn't get anywhere near finishing that album, I must say, maybe because it was my own money I was spending on them, maybe that had an influence on it. But they were the same, we'd go down the pub and we'd take our stickers with us and have a few beers and swap stickers. I must admit at that point I didn't have kids, they did, so I'm not quite sure what my excuse was for doing it. They had a legitimate excuse.
Do you think this is something you're going to pass on to your son?
I think so. I tried to do it with the last World Cup last year, and again that didn't really take off, but he was a little bit young then. He really, I am quite methodical about making sure the stickers are in the squares and everything, and I wasn't letting him loose with that.
Oh no. And what happens in terms of who you support? Is that something you naturally pass down to your offspring, or do you let them have free choice?
Yeah, I'm a Liverpool fan, but no one else in my family is, so that was something I don't know the reasoning for that. As long as I remember, I've been a Liverpool fan. Maybe it was something in school, friends in school. I've tried to push that on to Lucas, but again, I was kind of given free rein to support who I wanted to. So if he chooses to go and support someone else, that's up to him.
Those are all our late lunch leftovers for this week. Do tune in for the main helping on Manx Radio, weekdays just after 2 p.m.
Every week, of course, we'll have our regular features with Duxford Diaries, we'll have Mark Tiley's Greatest Hit, Midweek Mindfulness, and plenty more with our monthly guests as well.
But for now, thank you so much for listening to the Late Lunch Leftovers podcast. We'll see you again next time.